All right, so we got a small, cozy group here. That's exciting. I'm gonna sit today just to kind of celebrate the small mood that we got going on here, and hopefully we can have a little conversation. Am I too close to you guys, or is it okay? I've never seen anyone sit in this front row. This pretty much should be a wall. I mean, it serves the same purpose. So I don't want to be too close. I'll scoot back a little bit. What we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be giving a message. We're going to be taking a break from our story series, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different. The message I want to share today is something that's very close to my heart. It's actually something that I've been wanting to share for a while now, and I don't know why I never got to it, and I think it's important that we do it now. We have a couple board meetings coming up, and I think it's going to be crucial to kind of set the stage for that. So before I do that, I just want to give a little caveat. I have the greatest admiration and respect for pastors. Do you guys appreciate what pastors do? I'm not saying this because I want you to say, "Oh, Jeremy is such a great pastor." I'm not saying that, but what I mean is, I really admire and respect pastors, and I think we've all seen pastors do phenomenal things in our lives and in other people's lives as well. And so, what I want to share today is not in any ways to undermine pastors in any way. Some of us have parents who are pastors here. Matthew, your dad's a pastor. Obviously, we know that. Joseph, I don't know if people know this, but your dad's a pastor as well. My father-in-law is a pastor, and I really admire and respect what he does as well. So I just want to set the stage there that I really admire and respect the office of the pastor. So and you'll kind of realize why I'm putting out this caveat right now. So I just want to say that before we start with the message, let's go ahead and pray. Father in heaven, Lord, I just want to pray that you be with us now. Open our hearts and minds to understand your word and the things that we're going to be talking about. Lord, help us have an open mind and an open heart, because we want to become a church that grows to be a beautiful, loving, and warm church to the community around us, especially to those who may have walked away from you at one time, who may be unfamiliar with you. Lord, we want to be a family that welcomes all people to this place. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay. So, whenever you go to a job, right, you guys go through the whole interview process, and they hand you a sheet with a contract, and you get a contract, but they give you something else that kind of outlines your responsibilities. You guys know what I'm talking about? What's that called typically? A job description, right? Every job has a job description. When I go work for my boss in Victorville in physical therapy, he gives me a contract, I'm going to pay you this much, and this is also the things that are expected of you. Job descriptions are great, wouldn't you say? If you didn't have a job description, you're not protected from being asked to do anything. If you don't have a job description, you may be asked to clean the toilet, and you can't say, well, this isn't in my job description. Everyone wants a job description, right? Isn't that true? When I got hired at this church, we went through a long interview process, and I actually didn't get a contract, and I actually didn't get a job description either. So this is kind of why I'm going to be addressing this today. That if it was left up to me, I can do whatever I would well please. And so we're going to be talking about the office of a pastor. Now, what I will say is today is kind of an in-house discussion. I know we have some guests here, and so you guys will get to see the little inner workings of Hilltop a little bit. But I just want to I think this is important. And this is one of the biggest reasons that I actually came back into pastoral ministry, what I'm going to share with you today. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so my question to you guys is this. What is a pastor? What is a pastor? Now, this might seem like the obvious answer, but kind of, what's the word? Humor me. Talk to me. What is a pastor? All right, let's do a little bit more specific question. What does a pastor do? If you were to write a job description of a pastor, what would you say is on that list? So we can have a dialogue. There's not many of us here. Let's talk about it. You guys can just shout it out. Equip, okay. What do you mean? Perfect, great. That's a good answer. Leads, okay. What's that? Sir, they preach. Good. That's a good one. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah. Spiritual guidance. This is your opportunity, guys. You're writing my job description for me. So the more you say, the more I'll do. Right. So what else? What else do pastors do? Hospital visits. That's a good one. That's true. They read. Their job is to read their Bible. Okay. Sure, they have to be well studied with the scriptures to be able to share with other people. So they have to teach the Bible as well, right? Right? Okay. Anyone else? What's that? Inspire people? Okay, good, definitely. Anyone else? Any other job descriptions? What do you guys think pastors do? Meetings, administrate, logistics, things like that. Good. I heard someone else say something. No, that's a pretty good list. Are you guys pretty agreed with the things that were shared here? Yeah. There's a lot of ideas of what pastors are. I'm gonna give you a few quick ones here. Is this working? First model, this is a very recent model that people are starting to believe that pastors should operate like CEOs, right? They need to keep an organization moving smoothly. They need to administrate. They need to write bylaws and constitutions and a lot of this. And I've actually been doing this. If you go on the website and the administration page, there's pages and pages of like, oh, if you want a reimbursement, you got to do it this way. And we have a finance team and the constitution of the board is like 7 people and a quorum is 6 people. So they write and write and write to make the logistics and the business of the church to keep going. Have you guys kind of seen this before, that the pastor is the CEO of a church? So some people think that pastors should be CEOs in a sense. Another model is the pastor as a priest. They think that the pastor is a sort of spiritual guru, right? That he has some kind of spiritual truth that us normal everyday people don't have access to. And so his prayers are special, his sermons are special, his Bible studies are special, that he has some kind of special access to God that he gives to the people, right? Protestant Christians generally reject the idea of pastors as priests because they think that God speaks to everybody equally, that everybody has equal access to God. But tacitly, I think it's easy, I know it's easy for me, to believe that, the pastor has some kind of special access to truth, that he's a scholar, that he's a professional, that he knows something about the Bible that I can't possibly know. Isn't that true? Guys, my eye is twitching today, so if you see it, I'm not angry or anything. It's been happening all morning. It's really weird, so just, if I stutter, it's probably that. The third thing that people think is that pastors are shepherds. How many of you guys have heard that a pastor is a shepherd? This is actually very close to the biblical terminology. The Bible word, this is the one that I always forget, is poimen. Say that with me. Poimen. So pastor actually means shepherd in Greek, and they think that the pastor is a shepherd. That all of us are lost, I don't want to say dumb, but dumb sheep, and they have to kind of spiritually guide us and nurture us, right? And this is somewhat accurate, and they think that we have to take care, or the pastor should take care of the flock. This is not wrong, but have you guys heard or thought at any time that the pastor is a shepherd, right? Okay, good. I'm gonna get to that. So what I want to present to you guys, the idea that I want to present to you guys today is that if you go into the Bible and you look for what a pastor is, you'll be very hard pressed to find it in the Bible. That it's almost impossible to find the office of a pastor in the Bible. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. Before I do that, I want to ask this question. Are you okay, pastor? Are you okay, pastor? Now, the reason why I'm preaching this today, or the reason why I'm teaching this today, is not because I want you guys to feel bad about me, okay? I've only been doing this for a few months. I love it. It's great. I only do it part-time. I have another job that I can go to. I don't have to do this. I have plenty of other escapes and another job, so this is not really applying to me. And this is why I wanted to get back into pastoral ministry, because I felt like somebody had to say this, and it's hard for someone who's getting paid by the conference to say this. So I'm going to say it for them. Okay? So here's what I want to share with you guys. Pastor, are you okay? A recent Barna study surveyed all the pastors in the U.S., and they kind of said, okay, let's see how pastors are doing, right? And these are the statistics that came out. I picked and chose some of the sadder ones, but there's a lot of them. So here we go. Check this out. 90% of pastors, they say, work between 55 and 75 hours a week. 90% of pastors. That's a lot of work, right? How many of you guys work 75 hours a week? No, nobody works. Maybe some of you. Maybe some of the physicians, you guys work a lot of hours. I'm considered a teaching pastor. I don't work that much. I put a lot of time into preparing the sermons. I put a lot of time into writing the bylaws and whatnot. I definitely don't work that much. But Pastor On does. Pastor Matthew will. A lot of pastors work a lot of time. This is not that bad. People work hard. We want people to work hard, obviously. So let's keep going. 80% of pastors will not be in ministry 10 years later. The average shelf life of a pastor, they don't make it past 10 years. Even worse, check this out. On average, seminary-trained pastors only last, guess how long? 5 years in church ministry before they quit. This is probably one of the highest burnout rates of any profession in the world. 5 years. 80% won't be in ministry 10 years later. It is a hard profession. Check this out. 70% of pastors say they have lower self-esteem now than when they entered ministry. Sad, guys. 70%, these are big numbers. 70% of pastors constantly fight depression. 50% of pastors feel so discouraged that they would leave their ministry if they could, but they can't find another job because this is all they've been trained to do. 50%, they would leave if they could. 80% believe their pastoral ministry, listen to this, has negatively affected their families. 33% said it was an outright hazard. 70% of pastors do not have someone they consider a close friend. Guys, when I went to seminary, I met a lot of pastors, and I got to do a lot of internship with pastors. And when you talk to pastors, it's a sad life. It's a lonely life. Joseph, you grew up with your daddy. You know that it's a difficult life. I'm not saying that they're much worse off than others. We all have hardships, right? But to be a pastor is incredibly hard, incredibly harmful to the families of the pastors. Why is this, do you think? Do you think that this is the way that it should be? Again, what I'm proposing to you guys is if you go and look in the Bible for a pastor, the office of a pastor, you won't find one. You'll be very hard-pressed to find it. What I'm going to share with you today, the study that I'm going to share with you today, is taught explicitly in seminary. I went to the classes. I have the slides. I'll show them to you. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to excuse pastors or anything. They teach this in the seminary to people who are making this their life work. And I want to share that with you because I think it's really important for our church. And why does this relate to the unchurched? I'll tell you at the end. Okay, but it's important. But they teach this in the seminary. Okay, so let me begin with a couple things here. I'm going to move this up. Here's what I want to propose, and I'm going to build my case. The church was never meant to be led by one individual's leadership and oversight. The church led by one individual is tied to the limited potential leadership of one individual, as well as the fallacies and faults of one individual. It was never meant to be this way. The single leader model of church holds churches back from experiencing growth and spiritual maturity, while simultaneously subjecting leaders to unrealistic expectations of supporting a whole community, leading to unprecedented rates of burnout and failure. The early church, which I want to propose as the ideal church, was meant to be led by a group of spiritually mature, homegrown plurality of leaders. Okay? And I'm going to build my case from scripture here. Here we go. So what is a pastor? If we look in the are you guys following me? Are we together so far? That's kind of an interesting question, okay? So if we look in the church, if we look in the Bible and we look at the early church, when Jesus set up his church, they organized their church in a certain way, right? They had certain offices in there. But what I'm proposing is that it wasn't a pastor church. So what you'll find is in the Bible, they had three primary offices in the church: apostles, elders, and deacons. Okay? Let's say that together. Apostles, elders, and deacons. These are the three offices that you'll find in the church. The apostles, this literally in the Greek is apostolos. This just means people who are sent. What does that sound like in everyday language? What does that sound like in words that we use today? Missionary, right? The apostles were missionaries. They would go to a church, they stay there for a few weeks, preach the gospel, and they would move right on. They would always be itinerant, moving on and on and on and on, going to places where people have never heard about the gospel. These are your missionaries, apostolos, right? Your second office is the elders. This word is presbyteros. Can you say that with me? Presbyteros. That's where Presbyterian comes from. Presbyteros just simply means old person, or experienced person, or mature person. It's just like it sounds, an elder. I know we like to think, oh, it's an elder, like sage and like mysterious and mystical. No, it just means an old person. And the third one is deacon, diakonos. This just means a servant. Okay? So in everyday language, the three offices in the church back then, the ideal church had three things: a missionaries, old people, and servants. Okay? Nowhere in there will you find a pastor. So where do we get this idea of a pastor? Let's get into it. Elders are mentioned in the Bible. Okay, sorry. So this area of elders, this is where you're going to find the thing that's closest to a pastor. Okay? So there's three different words that are describing elders typically in the Bible. First one's elders. The second one you'll find is bishops, and the third one is pastors. There's only one time, and it's not even one. It's like almost one time where you might find something that alludes to an idea of a pastor. I'll show you what that is. Elders is referred to as that office 28 times out of 64 times in the New Testament. This is the principal way that the church was led back. Are we together so far? So again, apostolos, one who is sent. Elder, one who is old or mature. Now people say mature men, but there was women. The Bible refers to men and women as those who are old. What I want to propose is that it's not talking about age, it's talking about spiritual maturity, and that's going to get important in a little bit. And then third, your deacon, diakonos, the one who serves. So let's look at the scriptures and see what the scriptures say. Okay? Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. So here's what the church looked like, how it works. So we know the three things: apostles, elders, and deacons. Here's what it looked like. The apostles or the missionaries, Paul, would travel from city to city. And when he stopped at the city of Loma Linda, he would say, all right, appoint certain elders, appoint the most spiritually mature people to be in charge there, to be the ones who are going to lead the group. And then once they established it, they would move on. Okay, that's kind of what happens. Let me show you what it says in the Bible. Acts 14, verse 23. Paul and Barnabas, the apostles, appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord in whom they had put their trust. Right, so they appoint elders. Now let me ask you a question. How was it just one person that they put in charge? How do you know? It's plural, right? It says elders. Now I just want you to pay attention. Every time we see the word elders, you will see it in plural. You will never see it as an individual. Okay, so I'm going to show you more. Look again. The reason he's talking to Titus, the reason I left you in Crete was that you might put in order what was left unfinished and appoint what, guys, everyone? Elders in every town as I directed you. It doesn't say I wanted you to appoint a pastor in every town that I direct you. You need to set up elders, multitude. There's a plurality there, right? So in the church, in the early church, you had your apostles who went, bounced around. I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here. And then every church had a group of elders, multiple people who were spiritually mature, and they were the people who took care of the church. You're going to see it over and over in the text. Let's go through it. When they came to Jerusalem, the whole church gets together in Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. There's one church there. They were welcomed by the church and the apostles and the elders. Three people: the church, the apostles, and the elders. No pastors are present here. Okay? Again, the apostles and the elders met to consider this question. It seemed good to the apostles and the elders with who they wanted to decide about who they're going to send. To God, all God's holy people in Christ Jesus at Philippi, together with the overseers and deacons. Overseers is another, just a Greek word for elders in the church. So the disciples, I'm almost through these. So the disciples determined, everyone according to his ability, to send relief to the brothers living in Judea. And they did so by sending it to the pastor at the hand of Barnabas and Saul. Is that what it says? No, he sends it to the elders. You will never find an individual leader leading a whole church by himself in the New Testament. It was always a multitude of elders. So, where do we get this idea of pastor? Why do we have pastors today? Who started this idea? I could take you through a whole history, but let me kind of take you through the text here first. Here's where pastor does come from in the Bible. To the elders, Matthew chapter 17 is, to the elders, keep watch over yourselves and all the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be, what is it, everyone? Shepherds of the church of God. Now, shepherds is that word poimen. Remember that word before? This is to pastor someone or to shepherd someone. This is where we start getting the idea of pastoring, right? But who does the pastoring in this text? The elders do the pastoring, right? So there is not actually an office of pastors according to this text, but the elders are the ones who do the shepherding, who take care of the sheep. Is that clear? Again, to the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder and a witness of Christ's suffering, who also will share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. Again, he's saying the shepherd is the role that you are to do as an elder. So there is definitely a person that is supposed to shepherd and kind of keep care of his flock. But the Bible presents it as a multitude of people, the spiritual elders, who are supposed to do that. In the Old Testament, or in the New Testament, they were paid, some of them, but a majority of them were not paid. What we've done in our modern day is, over history, we have slowly decreased the number of people in charge for a variety of reasons. The early church, or at least the medieval church, wanted to do it for the reason of keeping the truth from the people so that they can control them, right? But for whatever reason, we've decreased the number of people in charge until the responsibility now falls on one individual. And now you got 75% of pastors who have no close friends, right? This is not how it was intended to be. Every early church was ruled by, not ruled, nobody ruled. Every church was led by a group of elders. So let me ask you the question, or let's ask the question then, what is the responsibility of an elder? What is an elder supposed to do? Let's look at the text again. I know it's a little heavy here, but I'm making a point. Let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. So what do elders do? They preach and teach. Okay, good. They preach and teach. An elder must hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught, so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it. So now what do elders do here? They encourage others spiritually, right? They keep the wrong truth from coming in, make sure that we know what is actually true. They determine they protect the sheep in a sense, right? They pastor. Again, here is a trustworthy saying: whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Notice it's not bad to want to be a leader. It's not bad to want to be an elder. He says that's noble to want to do that, right? Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money, and the list goes on and on and on. Basically, what Timothy is saying is, look, the person who is an elder should have the spiritual maturity to have a good reputation amongst the people around him. He shouldn't be the person who kind of just came into the church and is still trying to figure out his life. Someone who you guys respect, someone who you guys admire, someone who has his life together and who's able to teach the things. He knows the spiritual truth. He knows what it's like to lead a spiritual life. Those are the people you should be placing in charge of your church. And again, it's not singular. It's a plurality again. Is anyone among you sick? Sean said this. The pastor goes and visits the sick. He goes and visits those who are struggling, right? Was it Enoch? Or was it Sid? I'm sorry. Credit to where credit is due. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the pastor of the church. Again, he doesn't say the pastor. He calls for who? The elders of the church. Let them pray over him, anointing him with the oil in the name of the Lord. Everything that we've attributed to pastors that it is their job to do alone, the Bible never subscribes that to one individual. He says it should be a team of individuals, the spiritual leaders, the spiritual elders, the spiritually mature in your church to take on that responsibility. And it's my conviction, guys, that if we take this seriously and follow the model of the early church, the churches will become wholly, completely different. That we won't be limited by one person's vision, one person's ideas, and one person's abilities, and one person's time. But if everybody embraces it, the church will look wholly different. Now let me prove that to you. Let me show you what I mean. Again, be shepherds of God's flock. I'm talking to the elders. Keep watch over yourselves and all the flock. So this next verse is kind of the last verse that I'm going to go. We're going to have a little short message here. This is the last verse that I want to kind of pay attention to, and this is like the biggest one here. So let's listen to what it says. He gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers. Again, this is a shepherd teacher. He's saying the teachers. To equip the saints for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ. All right? So why did he give leaders in the church? For what purpose? I think Ram said this, right? To equip the saints for the work of ministry. Now, if you guys open up your King James Version Bible, what this actually looks like, it looks like this. He gave all these people, all these leaders of the church, to equip the saints, comma, for the work of ministry, comma, and for the building up of the body of Christ. Right? So does that change the meaning of the verse? You guys follow me here? Right? It does. He's saying the leaders of the church, the pastor of the church, his responsibility is to equip. It's also to do ministry, and it's also to build up the body of Christ. But you take out the comma and you read it how it says. It says it's to equip the saints for the work of ministry, to build up the body of Christ. You see the difference? Who's doing the ministry? The saints, not the pastor. The pastor's doing ministry too, obviously. Now listen to what he says is the result of if we embrace this model. He says, until we all attain to the unity of the faith, we'll become united in the knowledge of the Son of God to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine. We're not going to be spiritual infants anymore. We're not going to be unsure anymore. We're not going to be people who are not convicted anymore by human cunning, by craftiness, and in deceitful schemes. Rather, if the church embraces this model of leadership, he says, speaking truth in love, we are to, what everyone? Grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up and love. The church, when it is equipped to do the work of ministry, they grow. Guys, what I've seen in churches, through and through, is the people who grow the most are not the people who have the best pastors. The people who grow the most are not the people who have the most mentors. The people who grow the most are the people who do the mentoring, who do the teaching, who do the counseling, who do the caring and the nurturing. Those are the people who get the best blessing, who become the best spiritual giants in the church. We cannot allow pastors to steal the blessing that we all deserve to do ministry. And we can't expect them to do something that is unrealistic of them to do, right? So we need to help out the pastors in a sense, and not just for their sake, but for our sakes as well. And Paul says here, if we do that, the body will grow into a united and mature church. Now imagine with me this. You come into a church and you don't know anybody, and the only person who's doing work and the best person who's doing work is the pastor. They're the best pastor in the world. He's welcoming. He's a charismatic preacher. He's a great logistician. He's a great administrator. He does everything. Even if he says hi to the person and just welcomes them, if they don't make connections with 2 or 3 people who are warm and caring and welcoming and know what they're doing, will that person come back? Hilltop was successful from the beginning because everybody was bought in. Because if everybody didn't participate, the church wouldn't exist. There was like 7 of you guys here when I came in. And what I noticed is everybody cared. It was everybody's job to say, hey, be part of our church. Hey, let's talk about spiritual things. Hey, let's be accountable to one another. Everybody cared. And so what happens is when you bring in a pastor, you run the risk of losing that ownership because now you're paying somebody else to do it, right? So if it's his job, then it's not my job. And that's when churches tend to fall apart. They've had study after study that show that pastors who run multiple churches, those churches tend to do much better than churches who have just one pastor because they can't commit. Everybody else has to step up. Why am I telling you this? I'm not telling you this to make my job easier, guys. I have another job. I can go do something else. It doesn't matter to me. I have a great team here. I'm telling you this because a church that embraces the responsibility for everybody else as a group, as a whole, will be a church that people love to come to because everybody cares, right? So the early church, the ideal church was meant to be led by a group of spiritually mature, homegrown plurality of leaders. We're going to bring it home here. So what does that mean for us here at Hilltop? Typically, the model that most churches adopt is that the person who becomes in charge is the person who goes abroad or goes far away to a school and receives professional training for 4 years. And they come back and they are the experts, right? But the biblical model doesn't look like that. The biblical model looks something a little bit more like this. You come into the church, you have your unchurched. Those are the people we're looking for. But once you come into the church, you're kind of curious, you're kind of wondering where you are. You might call yourself a seeker. You're not committed to anything, but you're interested in the things that are spiritual. You want to, maybe I want to consider God. Maybe I'm considering these questions about faith. You find yourself as a seeker. There's some of you here who might consider yourself seekers. That's great. But the natural progression is that once you become a seeker and you decide, you know what, I actually want to pursue a relationship with Jesus. And I become reborn and I begin this new life. You become an infant. I don't know exactly what the truths are. I don't know what I believe, but I do know that there's something in me that I want to know about God. I want to explore God, and I want to kind of go on my way. But if somebody tried to trick me or someone tried to deceive me, I probably would be tricked because I just don't know too much, right? There's some of us here who are infants. I think we all know somebody here who might be an infant spiritually who just is trying to, they need the formula and they're just so excited to grow, and they grow so big every single day, just like babies do, and they get huge right away, right? So you have your spiritual infants. Then you progress to spiritual servants. This is your diakonos, your deacons. This is your adult, in a sense. Now I kind of get it. I kind of know what I'm doing. I want to be the person who takes care of other spiritual infants. I want to be the person who nurtures people and takes care of people, right? And so there's a natural progression for every single member, not just the clergy, to become what eventually becomes the spiritual elder, the spiritually mature. The model of church that we have today of one elder and everyone else is a parishioner essentially looks like one elder and a group of infants. And they become reliant on the one elder. God never intended us to be spiritual weaklings. He never intended us to not know what we believe. He never intended us to be not convicted of the truth. Everyone should be able to teach. Everyone should be able to eventually nurture people spiritually, to keep people spiritually accountable. To say if someone says something that is just outrageous, like like if you don't sell your car, God's gonna burn you in hell forever. Like everyone should be able to say, no, that's not true, and keep those things out of the church and let the things that are in be in, and be inclusive of everybody. This is the responsibility and the expectation of everybody in the church, right? So the natural progression is that we should go from seekers to infants to servants to elders. So why am I telling you this? At Hilltop, we need elders, guys. We need people to eventually step up and to take the place to model our church after the early church, after the ideal church. This church can rise and fall with whoever we bring in. Guys, we can't really afford another pastor, but if we wanted to, it will rise and fall based on who's available. We don't want to be dependent on that. We want to model ourselves after the ideal church. And so what I'm asking you to consider, those of you who come here very consistently, those of you who are committed to the church, I'm asking you to consider, do I want to take the next step and become an elder? Do I want to make the step to become a servant and then an elder, to take spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being, responsibility for the well-being of the people in my church? My goal as a pastor, as a teaching pastor, that's what you guys brought me back into. This is my job description. It's Ephesians 4, verse 11. All I want to do is equip this church to have a plurality of elders to take care of this church. And then once that happens, I'll step down. I don't have to be here. I don't need a job. This is my goal. So in a year, maybe 2 years, hopefully that what I see is that if we can model our church after the early church, a church that takes care of people as a whole, that our church will be incredibly unique, incredibly warm, and incredibly healthy, unlike any other church that might be out there. Are we together? Does that make sense so far? Yeah. Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to break up into small groups and kind of discuss this a little bit. So let's pray first and wrap this up here. Father in heaven, Lord, you've blessed us with so many amazing leaders in the past. I know that I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for the pastors that really encouraged me and nurtured me. And I admire the people who've done that. But Lord, I know that you want us to experience that call to leadership and that call to spiritual maturity for each and every one of us, not just the select few. And so, Father, I pray that you challenge us as we consider where we are, to teach us and to help us to grow, to become spiritually mature, to experience the abundant blessings that are in store for us when we learn how to love the people around us. In your name we pray. Amen. I just want to share one final statistic with you here. There are 18 million church members in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Guess how many ordained ministers there are? There's 18,000 ministers. And so that's 0.1% of the population of the people in the church. Is it reasonable to expect 0.1% of the people to take care of the other 99.9%? It's just unsustainable. And so the church, this is what they're teaching in seminary. This is what they're trying to teach across the whole profession, is that something has to change and we need to return to the roots of everything, because this is the only model that's sustainable. It's the only model that works. It's the only model that's going to allow the church to really become what the church was meant to be. Okay. Thank you, guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break up into small groups. We're going to just do a short small group time today, maybe 10 minutes. And we'll have some questions up there. Go ahead and answer the questions and just kind of respond of what you think the pastor should do, what you've positive experiences for the pastor, and how we can, and also assessing, where do I fit in this hierarchy right here of spiritual maturity. All right. Thanks, guys.